Hey guys, good morning. Today I'm out in the garden. We had a lot of rain yesterday and a little bit last night, and so everything is covered in dew and just beautiful. And so I thought I'd come out here and pick some snap peas, and I thought we'd just chat while I pick some peas so we can do this together. If you're new here, my name is Kiara. Feel free to call me Q, and welcome to my garden. I have a little notebook here because there were some things that I wanted to remember to talk about in this video here. But I've been reading this book called This Is Where You Belong by Melody Warnick. Yeah, Melody Warnick. And it's all about how people become attached to where they live, essentially. And so the book it goes into a lot of really cool details and a lot of cool studies about how people become attached to the different places that they live and their communities and stuff like that, to the point where they feel like it's kind of like a sense of home and belonging there. And she also talks about how people who move a lot, how they can kind of then create that sense of home and belonging and community into any place where they move, essentially. And so she goes through these different kind of like experiments or projects that she does in the new city that she moves to become like more attached to it. And it's all about this idea of what she calls place attachment. So this book is really interesting to me because, we just moved less than a year ago into this house, and with that, I love this house. We've worked on it a lot. It's been really great living here. And at the same time, this was a house that was kind of like, we moved in, there was a lot happening, we were really busy, and we have friends close by. We have a lot of friends close by, which is really great. But we haven't really had a chance to build any kind of like sense of community outside our house in the city that we live in. And so I was reading this book just to kind of get ideas on how to change that, essentially. And I came across this book on Pinterest of all places. So I was like, yeah, I'll read that. So I got it from the library and, checked it out from the library and started reading it. Oh, this one's kind of bad. But anyway, she had a lot of really great stuff in this book. And the reason I wanted to bring it up here with you today is because two of the things that she talked about as far as place attachment and getting to love the place where you live, she mentioned shopping at farmers markets and growing your own food, like growing food in a garden. And I love that she mentioned both of those things because I'm like, that's my jam. I do both of those things. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that for a little bit today because I thought that the book made some really good points. And I think it's a place that a lot of us, especially, a lot of us who are watching gardening content, homesteading content, what have you, on YouTube are, maybe we're in the place where we love and maybe we're in the place that's home, but a lot of us are also dreaming of the next place or, having more land, having more space, all of that kind of stuff. And I thought that was a really cool concept to bring up farmers markets and gardening as ways to kind of like feel like you belong in the meantime. As someone who loves to dream and loves to think of what's next and just imagine it, I get caught up in that sometimes, and sometimes it's a little sad. It's a little, I get caught up in the not having it and wanting it, and honestly, it's soul crushing sometimes to want something so badly and feel like you're really far from it, and or you are getting closer, but you're so caught up in the day-to-day of it that you lose appreciation of the fact that you are closer and you are getting more and more of your dream. Sometimes it feels like if it's not the whole thing, it's not good enough, or at least that's where my brain goes. And so this book was a really awesome read. I will link it below, but I got it from my library too, so you can check that out. But anyway, I think that she made some really awesome points as far as why going to the farmer's market and growing your own food, growing your own garden makes people happier where they live. Oh, there's a slug. That's gross. It's really hard to talk and pick at the same time because I'm doing one or the other here. Let me make sure I get all the good sized ones on here. So one of the things, just to start off talking about farmers markets and shopping at farmers markets, we've all heard the benefits a lot of why you should shop at farmers markets or why you should consider it, right? Like no one's, at least I'm not saying you need to do this, but some of the benefits of it. And those are things that usually are talking about, you know, the food is more local, it hasn't traveled as far, so the carbon footprint of the food is, as far as like what it takes to transport it, is significantly shortened because all of the vendors are, you know, close by, either in your city or if you have a bigger farmers market, they're at least in your state. And so that's way different than food that's being shipped from across the country or from different countries. And so that's one of the arguments on why food is just better from the farmer's market and why it's good to shop from there. With that is flavor. So with food that is, you know, commercially grown, commercially shipped, it's grown for its storage life and its ability to basically make it to wherever it's going without being bruised and just like completely messed up. And so those are things too that when you're shopping from the farmer's market, those aren't the main criteria. So yes, they want the food to like last long and be fresh and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times, especially if it's local, farmers are picking, you know, fruit that's ripe the day before or even the morning of, a lot of times, depending on what time your farmer's market starts. And so you're actually getting much fresher food. It's not picked when it's green and then like ripening kind of along the way so that it's close to ripe or ripening at the store as it sits on the store shelves. And so one, you're getting riper, better tasting food. And the other thing too is like because they don't have to pick varieties that store as well, there's a lot more consideration for what tastes good, right? Because if you're shopping from the farmer's market, people are going to come back to your booth and they're going to buy what's good. They're not going to buy what sat on your storage shelf for the longest. Like they're not looking for that. They're usually looking for something they can eat that week. And if it's good, they're going to come back to your booth. I think I got all the peas on this side. Let's move locations. And this is what we got so far. Okay, now I'm on the other side of this pea plant. You can see I'm just on the other side of this trellis here. So with that, that's one of the main reasons that we always hear about why it's, you know, better to shop at the farmer's market and stuff like that. But one of the points that this book made that I thought was a really good point was with going to the farmer's market, as far as like building a sense of community, and that requires, you know, talking to people. And so with a supermarket, you know, you go in, you get all your stuff. Maybe you talk to someone if you have a question, you can't find something, but a lot of times, like you can go into a supermarket. I know I do this. I go in with headphones on because I really don't like supermarkets. It makes me like kind of anxious. Actually, like the idea of Costco in rush hour makes me literally sweat. Like I don't want to go. I don't want to be a part of it. It makes me super anxious and I don't want to do it. But the farmer's market, I like going there. And it's interesting because I'm a huge introvert and I will totally go to the farmer's market any day, but grocery stores, I hate it. And one of the things that they talk about in this book as far as building community is if you go into a grocery store, you might talk to somebody while you're shopping, maybe. A lot of times we don't, and we, you know, put in headphones, we make it so that we don't have to talk to someone. And then you go to the checkout, you might like chit chat a little bit with the person that works there who's checking you out, and then you leave, right? And that's most of the interactions that people get at grocery stores. And then, you know, a lot of times right now, you don't even have to do that because now there's self-checkout. So you can literally go to the grocery store, get your food, and get out without talking to a single soul. And I'm not gonna lie, as an introvert, I like that some days. I don't want to always talk to people, or I'm tired and it's exhausting, and so I don't. But that is one of the options for how we shop nowadays, and there's no real connection to it, right? But with the farmers market, the point that this book made was one of the studies that she quoted was that at a farmers market, people have 10 times the amount of interactions as they do at a grocery store, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because like I said, you go to a grocery store, you might talk to the cashier, you might not, there might not even be a cashier when you check out. And at the farmers market, every single booth that you buy something at has an interaction with the person who owns that booth, right? With that farmer or the person that, is on their team. And you do that every time you buy something at every single booth at a farmer's market. And so there's that many more opportunities for you to talk to people, to chit chat, to, learn something new about what they're growing, to ask questions about how they're growing things, to comment on something that's really cool that you see. We've gotten a lot of recipe ideas from just asking people, we've never eaten this before. How do you eat it? All of that kind of stuff. And it's really fun to have those conversations and have those interactions at farmers markets. And that goes a long way to making people feel more at home wherever they live. Oh, here's a few that I missed on the other side. Okay, let's see. Let's give this a good look over. Okay, I think we've cleaned this one out. So let's do the one behind me now. Status report. We're doing pretty well. And next spot we're going, right behind me. You can see that there's a ton on this one. This was our area that's doing the best. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, with a farmer's market, there's just way more opportunities to talk to people. And so you're essentially, every time you're talking to someone, and it's more than, hello, how much is this? You're building connections. And with the farmer's market, one thing we really like to do is when we like a vendor or we like one of their products, we try to go back to their booth every week. And, how good does it feel when someone recognizes your face? When me and my husband go to a booth and someone smiles and their face lights up because they remember seeing us last week or they remember what we bought last week, that gives us so much joy, right? And so it makes us more likely to go back to that person's booth again. It makes us more likely to not only just buy stuff, but try to build more of a connection and talk to them more week to week, because they know you, right? And you know them. Even if you don't know each other's names right away, it still feels like, hey, there's someone here that knows me. And that is something that, matters a lot when it comes to place attachment and feeling like some place is home. It's when you go somewhere and people know you, you're not just a nameless, faceless person in the masses, when you feel like there's a connection there, and it always feels like, maybe this person cares about me a little bit. And as the relationship goes on, it feels like they care more and more and you care more and more. Right. And so I think that that's a beautiful thing that this book brought up about why it's important to consider shopping at farmers markets, especially if you're new to an area, new to a town, or, you're just trying to love where you are in the meantime. I think that that's a great point as far as getting to know people. And then the other thing that the book brought up was gardening, which was totally unexpected for me. I didn't plan to, or I didn't think I would see anything about gardening in a book like this, because it was all these experiments about like shopping locally and going to local restaurants and supporting local businesses that you want to see stay open, and, donating your time, volunteering, all that kind of stuff. And so seeing something that said, grow your own garden, was really cool for me. So I was like, oh, I do that. Let's talk about it. But a few of the things that she talked about, as far as, and it wasn't a long section of the book or anything like that, but I loved that it was in there. But she talked about how when you are growing a garden and you are literally like putting down roots, figuratively and literally, you are putting seeds in the ground, you're putting plants in the ground, you are putting down roots, you become more attached to the the soil, the land itself, right? And I thought that that was a really cool concept too, where you are feeling that actual place attachment of like, this is my place, this is my land, this is my soil, you know, and I'm doing something good for it and doing something good for myself. And I thought that that was a really cool point to bring up. It's basically, you know, you are going through the process of nurturing something and caring about something. And anytime you do that, it is going to make you care about it even more, right? You start nurturing something, you start caring about something, you care about it even more as time goes on, and then you become attached. And with gardening, it's so great because you're also always getting this kind of like feedback loop of, you know, you're caring for something and maybe it's growing and that's exciting and it's, you know, it's beautiful or it's providing you with food or both, right? A lot of times. And so that makes you care about it more, that makes you want to do it more. And then other times when it's not so great, maybe, you know, things are dying a little bit or they don't look the way that you want them to, you might put more energy into trying to figure out what's wrong with it, and so that you can figure out, you know, how to fix it, how to make it healthier, all of that. And all of that is a part of caring and nurturing and attachment, essentially. And the cool thing about this is it works even with a patio garden, even with like just a small herb bed or a small like pot of flowers. Like, I, once she brought this up, I thought about all the different little gardens we've had, including when we lived in a little, a tiny 500 square foot apartment, and we had, you know, this little patio because it was upstairs, and we had this little patio and we grew a couple pots and it was really shady and we couldn't grow much, but that was the first place where we grew some flowers in pots, and we tried to grow beans and they didn't do very well, and we grew our first cherry tomato plant in that house or in that little apartment. And it taught us so much about gardening, but we were so attached to it, you know. And I think about our last garden that started as 2 4x8 raised beds, and it was because of the good feelings we had about that little patio garden with our little I think it was like 6 pots, like it was not very much at all that we could fit there, but because of the encouragement that we got there when we moved to, you know, our slightly bigger house that still had a really small backyard, but we decided we were going to do 2 4x8 raised beds. And with that, you know, I got so much out of that. And eventually we were able to reconfigure the garden and figure out how we could get 4 4x8 raised beds to fit in there, you know. And I had my first zinnia patch there, and that was the first time I grew full-size tomato plants, and it was the first time I grew, honestly, a lot of the things that we grow now, most of the things that we grow now. And I loved it, you know. And even though I didn't really like that house the whole time we lived there, it was always supposed to be temporary and we were only going to live there for a couple years. That was always the plan. Um, it was sad to move out of that house and dismantle that garden and take it back to, you know, the way it was when we moved in. It was really sad to leave it, and I had a grieving process and I missed it. I still miss it, even though the garden that I have now is amazing and we're building it out now, and it's already 3 times the size as that last garden, and that's just counting the beds, you know. And we have so much space right now, but I still miss that little garden, you know, and I still became very attached to it, and it made me love that backyard and that house that I didn't love, you know, but it made me like the entire house more. Also, I will say that was my COVID garden. And so it got me through a really hard time and a really scary time, and I learned a lot of lessons there about gardening. But I think more importantly, I keep almost eating this. I think more importantly, I learned a lot of lessons about myself through the process of taking care of that garden and learning to love where I was at the time when, even something like this, we have a quarter acre now, felt so impossible and so far away. And, I was living in a house that I didn't really want, but it made me like it, and it made me love parts of it. And I thought that that was just such a huge gift from gardening. And now, like I said, we have a much bigger garden now, and it's really exciting, and we've started to build it out, and it's really starting to become something. But even this is not our ultimate dream. Like, our dream is to have multiple acres, and just have a ton of space and a huge garden and all of this kind of stuff. But this was our next step. This was our next in-between time. This was the next thing we could do, that was feasible for us. And so this was the next place where I had to figure out how to love it. Now, granted, I love this house from the day that we bought it, right? But like I said, with building the garden out and nurturing for it or taking care of it, it's become a thing where now it's a practice of like, how much can I love this place? What else can I do to make it better? What else can I do to make it, over the next few years, that handful of years, however long we're here, how can I make it the absolute best that it can be, the most beautiful that it can be, the healthiest that it can be, the most abundant place that it can be? Like, I get so excited about those ideas and doing that here. And then I also think about the memories that that's going to create for our family and for our friends and our loved ones, like having people come here and eat out of our garden and, eat food that we've prepared for them from our garden, have parties here, have dinners here, have lunches here. I'm so excited for all of those memories and moments. And it all revolves around loving this garden and loving this house and loving exactly where I am now, even as I still really, really want, the multiple acres. This practice allows me, and a lot of what they talk about in the book, it allows me to get back to, I'm not going to stay in a place where I'm dreaming so much that it starts to feel terrible, because then it feels like, well, I don't have and I can't have. When will I have? Probably never. Like, that's where your brain goes, right? But in doing that, I would miss out on what I have now and what I can create now and what I can learn now for the next place. Like, that's a huge one. What can you learn now where you are to prepare you for your next dream or your next step towards your dream? Jess from Roots and Refuge, I talk about her all the time. she is so awesome to me, but she has this phrase that she says, turn your waiting room into a classroom. And I really take that to heart. Hearing her say that has helped me in so many places where I was just waiting and I was really upset about it, because it felt like it was just waiting and waiting and nothing's happening. And then it turns into this kind of like, for me, it turns into kind of a negative entitlement of like, when is this happening? It's not happening for me. I want it. Why don't I have what I want? And it's all icky and gross feeling. But with turning it into a classroom, you think of all the things that you could do where you are and all the things that you can learn to prepare yourself for that next. Remy, my dog just saw a squirrel and he's not having it. What was I saying? Oh yeah, like, what can you do to prepare yourself for that next step, next place, that dream place, And in focusing on the classroom and focusing on where I am right now and what I can do with where I am right now and making the best of it and the most of it for me and for the place where I am, I actually start dreaming of all the things that can happen right here. And they're kind of amazing. And so I hope that that's something that you can find too, where as you start thinking of like, okay, well, what can I do here? It turns into, what do I get to do here? You know, how amazing could this place be where I am right now? How amazing could the relationships that I build around where I am right now, around my garden where I am right now? What can I learn? What can I grow in my garden and in myself, right? Because so much of this is life lessons. And so it's how can I love this garden, but really how can I love myself? How can I love my life where it is right now, today, you know? And I love all those ideas. Like I love the potential that brings up, and then it all feels possible because it's all based on where you are. So yeah, that's just kind of what's been on my mind reading this book. Again, it's called This Is Where You Belong by Melody Warnick. And it's been on my mind the last couple days, and it was a beautiful read, and I'm glad I read it. And I hope that this is an encouragement to you to not just see where you are and, you know, as a reflection of not being where you want to be or as a comparison of not being where you want to be, but also as something that you could do something with, you know, and then maybe even celebrate. Like that'd be really cool if you got to the place where you could celebrate where you were and how you love your life and how you love the people around you exactly where you are, and feel that sense of belonging and know that you can take it with you wherever you go because you created it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for hanging out with me today as I kind of picked some peas. I have a few more to do, but this is our progress right now. So we got a pretty good haul. And hi, buddy. Remy is right behind my camera. But thanks for hanging out with me today, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.